Hello, everybody. This is Keith Caldwell with Failure to Plan. I'm here with my good friend Ryan Platt. Say hello, Ryan.
Hey, everybody. How are you?
Hey, we had some technical difficulties last time we were trying to get together, and this is a continuation of the series we've been doing. And this topic today is on beneficiary designations and why they're important. So, first of all, I'm going to have Ryan introduce himself for those of you who may not know who he is. Go ahead, Ryan.
You got it, Keith. Thanks. I'm Ryan Platt with a special needs plan, and our focus is serving families that have a loved one with disability to ensure that they have a proper plan going forward and their loved one's always okay and it's communicated appropriately throughout the family.
Excellent, excellent. My name is Keith Caldwell. I am a parent, not a financial planner, not an attorney, not a insurance person. I'm just a dad who's trying to help figure this out for myself, and Ryan's been kind enough to share with us his vast knowledge, and this is a continuation of that discussion he and I have been having over the last several months. So hopefully you guys are getting something good out of it. I know that I'm getting a lot of good, useful information out of it, and that's the purpose, is to help educate parents so that we can provide for our kids, not only now, but in the future. So, Ryan, I will let you go ahead and get started with beneficiary designations and why that's even important.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate the conversation today. It seems like a really simple and a kind of innocuous item, and boring beneficiary designation, because when we think about beneficiary designations, it's kind of that little line on either our 401k at work or our IRA or our life insurance, whether it's individual or our life insurance at work. When somebody asks, well, who do you want to be the beneficiary? It's almost like an afterthought of, well, I don't know. If I'm married, I guess I put my spouse. Well, do you want to have a secondary beneficiary? Meaning, if something happened to you and your spouse together, who would be the next person that gets these dollars? And a lot of times we say, nah, I don't know who I would give it to, so let's just leave it blank. Or we would say, well, let's make it my children, right? And maybe, Keith, you can kind of speak to me a little bit here, but a lot of times when I speak to individuals and families that are, and spouses that are now divorced, a lot of times they'll go back and change their beneficiary to their kids, right? They'll have the primary beneficiary be their children because, there's no reason to give it to the ex-spouse. You want to make sure your kids get it.
That's for sure, Ryan.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Spouses have gotten enough, don't you think?
and so you want it to go to your kids, and so you put the primary beneficiary, you change it to the children, and so one of the things that makes me cringe is that we don't understand enough about what these beneficiary designations do for us, or more importantly, for those people who are left after we're gone, which is, for everybody that's listening to this, is going to be our children. Mm-hmm. And we really want them to have these financial means to continue to make sure they have support over their lifetime. And what happens is, let's say in two scenarios, let's say that like your family, Keith, both your sons are minors, right? And so obviously, one of your sons has autism, the other one does not. But even in that case, let's just say, they're both minors, and take that as the generalization right now. Well, what happens is, if the beneficiary is a minor, then basically the state is going to come in and say, okay, well, if the beneficiary is a minor, they obviously can't manage the money themselves, so we're going to basically help them manage it, and dole it out as we see fit until they turn age of 18, and then they give it all to that child. So let's say somebody had $1 million life insurance policy or a $500,000 life insurance policy, and all of a sudden they pass away and their child's 12, the state's going to control that and kind of dole it out until the child reaches age 18, and then whatever's remaining of that, let's say $500,000 policy, let's say there's $350,000 left, well, then the state's just going to write the check to the child at that moment for $350,000. Mm-hmm. And whether your child has has a diagnosis or whether your child does not, $350,000 at age 18 is probably not going to work out well.
I think whether you're autistic or not, you're right. It's not going to.
Right, exactly. Regardless, we're probably not making the best decisions at that point with that amount of money.
Right.
Especially when either one parent or both parents are gone and out of the situation.
Right.
Right. There's very little guidance at that point. And so even if your child doesn't have a diagnosis, that one's probably going to blow it also. You know?
On video games.
Exactly, on something. I don't know. They're going to, you know, as my 10-year-old says, he wants to buy a Ferrari. Well, that would probably eat it up, you know? But even if your child does have a diagnosis and does have a disability, well, that's gonna cause another layer of issues, which we'll talk about in our next conversation on government benefits. But again, for a lot of these government benefits, these needs-based benefits like Medicaid or Medi-Cal in California, where you are, Keith, you know, it has asset limits, right? So if all of a sudden they get a big check that's more than $2,000, well, now all of a sudden they're not going to qualify for some of these benefit programs, which can really be a hindrance to helping them support their living needs for the rest of their life. So, so when we have minor children, beneficiary designations are very important. Is that we don't want to make them the beneficiary, right?
Right.
We want to have things in place where it doesn't go to them. You know, probably the best thing to do, and we talked about this, if I'm looking at our calendar several weeks back in the legal planning section, is that the best thing to do is just like you're doing all these segments for us, Keith, is to think ahead, have a plan and act on it, and have some of those legal instruments in place like a trust. So that if there's a trust in place, you can make the trust that beneficiary on those items that have a beneficiary designation, like IRAs, Roth IRAs, 401k, life insurances. And so it goes into a trust for your child, and then the court's not a part of that situation. And then, you know, the trust will determine, because you predetermine how that money is going to be provided to your child and for what reason.
Right.
And so it protects them, and it protects really the future caregivers that you're asking to take care of your child. Because now that's in a place where, you know, there's access to it for certain things, but that isn't going to be an asset of your child at some point out in the future. So these beneficiary designations, you know, are very important in reference making sure that you adjust them appropriately as you're putting the plan together. It's very common to have, you know, a spouse on there, and it's very common to forget about the beneficiary designation. Even in a divorce situation, sometimes we forget to change the beneficiary designation from the ex-spouse. Right? It's one of those small things that just kind of, there's a lot of other bigger things to do. And it's one of those small things we don't think about. A lot of times, you know, when I get a question as well, is that, well, I have a will and it tells everybody where my stuff is going to go. You know, I have a will that tells everybody, okay, you know, this dollar amount's going here and this dollar amount's going here. So why would I have to change the beneficiary designation? And again, a very important item to understand with beneficiary designations is that the beneficiary designation trumps anything that you say in your will. So even if you have a will that dictates that you don't want your son or daughter to get any money until X date, or you want your son or daughter who has a disability to have that money in a special needs trust, and you have all that great stuff laid out in your will. Well, if you never change that beneficiary designation on your IRA, Roth IRA, 401k, life insurance, then if your child's name is on there, it trumps what the will says. It goes right around the will, right to your child. And so it won't matter what your will says in that situation.
Well, let me ask you a question, Ryan. Worse yet, let's say that you do have a beneficiary designation and it's your spouse, right? And that's all you have in there. Is it also true that, and let's say that your spouse predeceases you, and now there's essentially no designation there at all because she's no longer alive.
Yes.
And doesn't it mean also that if you have kids, that the courts will decide that, oh, he's got two heirs, therefore that money should be split, right? So even if you don't have a designation, don't they automatically apply one? Or am I missing?
Nope. That's a great question, and it will go into the laws of your individual state. So those intestate laws, it will default to those. So if it basically says, if it says to the estate of the insured, then if you have a will, it could go to your will. If not, it'll, like you said, it'll just go to the estate, and then the state laws can come into play. Some, like you say, if you have two children, it'd be split 50-50. Some states out there will actually have, if your parents are still alive and you have children, a part would actually go to your parents, and then a part would go to your children. So each state has different rules there, but those state rules would definitely come into play if we don't list out, those beneficiaries of, primary, secondary, and even tertiary beneficiaries on there. So again, you kind of control where those dollars go.
Well, help me understand something, and thanks for clarifying that, because I think that is an area that could happen very easily, is that you have your spouse, she predeceases you or he predeceases you, and now there's essentially no one, and it's one of those things that you don't get back to, you just keep forgetting about, and then you pass, and now all of a sudden the money that's in this policy goes to whatever the laws of your state are, and that's not necessarily what you want to do. So what kinds of things, Ryan, are the things that you need to be concerned with? Clearly, bank accounts, life insurance policies, 401ks, retirement accounts. What other kinds of things, or is that pretty much all of it?
Yeah, really the major accounts that move by beneficiary designation, that do not move by your will, are going to be your retirement plans. So maybe if you're employed and you have a 401k, or you have a 403b, or you have a simple IRA, any retirement plan at work, maybe if you have a pension plan, any type of retirement plan at work, a Roth 401k, any individual retirement plan like an IRA or a Roth IRA, and then any type of life insurance, whether you own it individually or whether you own it at work, like a group life insurance plan, moves by beneficiary designation. Almost all other assets will move by your will, by what your will says, or by what the laws of your state say if you don't have a will. Now, you can change that, just like you just said, Keith, if you have a bank account or an investment account, you can make that what's called either a transfer on death account or a payable on death account, which basically means you're making it a beneficiary account. So you can say on those bank accounts and investment accounts, well, if I die, here's where I want it to go on that account specifically, so that then it doesn't roll through your will or the laws of the state if you don't have a will. So you can kind of make those beneficiary accounts if you choose to. However, the other ones that I listed, retirement accounts and life insurance, those are always going to be beneficiary accounts. You don't have a choice on those type of financial instruments.
So when you're sitting down and working with one of your potential clients, you sort of go over, all right, give me your list of all your life insurance accounts, all your I forgot, having a brain fade here, all the things, retirement accounts, all that kind of thing. And then you make sure that it's listed the proper way, meaning that, do you want it to go to the spouse? Probably in your community property state, but for the secondary ones where you have kids, you probably want to have a trust for your kid with special needs to go there. And then we talked about it, at age 18, it's probably not a good idea for even my other kid to get his money, so there's ways that you can meet with someone like Ryan or other people to help set up other kinds of trusts that may be for the benefit of a kid who doesn't have special needs, but it's just probably not very prudent for him to get, $500,000, $1 million at age 18.
Right.
It's probably better doled out over a period of time as he matures in age and has different needs. So I think that's a really good point to do. I mean, to sit down and sort of look at your whole global picture.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. That's definitely part of what we do is when families come to work with us, they kind of bring the whole shooting match, kit and caboodle, however you want to call it, but everything in their financial life. So all their account statements, their life insurances, if they work at a company, their employee benefits book, how they list everything out, so we can really dive into it with them and make sure everything's designed appropriately together.
Well, because you're putting together a comprehensive total life plan, not just one for your kid with special needs. I mean, you as a parent or me as a parent need to be concerned about the totality of my family, not just the one child. Obviously, the one child is what brought you and I together, but I've got another kid, and let's assume I get remarried and maybe have another child, or if I get remarried and don't have another child, I have a wife to be concerned with. I think that as a planner, I need to be thinking about the whole picture, and I think working with someone like you helps put that together. And it narrows that piece off for your kid who has special needs, who has unique circumstances that need to be considered. So I think it's really important. So this is one of those topics that is significant, has huge implications on your overall plan if done wrong, but it's something that could be relatively done pretty quickly if you do it. Meet with someone like you and get the right point of do it like this and put it in like that, change the designations like this, and you're good kind of thing, right?
Right. Yep. It's like a lot of things in life, once we know, it becomes a lot easier to act on it, right? It just once we know what to do, the action steps don't necessarily have to be very complex. They can be pretty easy.
Right.
And that's definitely how beneficiary designations work, right? As long as we know what we want them to do, it's pretty easy to make sure we execute it appropriately.
Okay. Well, I think this was a really great topic. I mean, did we cover pretty much everything you wanted to talk about today, Ryan?
Yeah, I believe so. Certainly, if folks have questions, post them, and we'll do our best to answer them as timely as possible.
Okay, excellent. Now, we have one scheduled for this Friday at 9 o'clock time, 12 o'clock Eastern time. So 9 o'clock Pacific time, 12 o'clock Eastern time.
Can we do 9:15 and 12:15?
Yes, we can, Ryan. For you.
Okay.
For you.
Awesome. Sorry about that.
That's all right. So 9:15 and 12:15, that's fine. I'll make sure I make the notes on changes on that. Can you give us a quick snapshot on what that's looking like and what kinds of things we're going to talk about?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because it's like what you just said earlier, Keith. It's this kind of planning has to be kind of totality because obviously so many things are linked together, and we're going to talk about government benefits coming up in our next session. And when we think about government benefits, a lot of folks that I speak to initially just think of those needs-based like SSI or Medicaid or Medi-Cal. Benefits programs. But really, when you think of government benefits, we want to think about it over, your entire life, Keith, as the parent, as well as your son's entire life, which means that we need to understand kind of the three different pieces of government benefits and how your life will impact his benefit program. So, for example, certainly you have the SSI and Medicaid area, and then you have SSDI, which is Social Security Disability Income, which again may not hit many families, but then you have what's called SSA, which is Social Security Administration, which is the retirement section. So as you said, it's a totality of a plan because your choice that you make, Keith, or that other folks make in terms of their decision about how they take their Social Security retirement benefit will trickle down and impact the amount your son will receive after you retire, which could either put them in jeopardy of losing a lot of Medicaid if their new income is over the income limit, depending on
Mm-hmm.
what age you decide to take it and what your amount is. And so there's
Right.
planning to be done there to make sure that they continue to keep the retirement their government benefits intact while you're maximizing yours for your future retirement. And so that's one area that we don't normally think of that are certainly linked together as you and your child progress through life together.
Right.
That we need to understand. And so that's a little bit about what we'll talk about. And interestingly, I had an organization just call me to speak at their state conference. And one of the things they wanted to speak on, they wanted us to put together a presentation that was focused on afraid to retire. Because they've had so many parents in their 50s worried about, okay, well, how does my retirement impact my child? And we're worried about it.
Right.
Not only about their own retirement, but the impact on their child. So it's an interesting topic, a little bit different from what we normally think about with government benefits, but we'll touch on it a little bit.
You know what? I just looking ahead. I'm just in that short little brief information you gave me, Ryan, made me think of a lot of questions that I hadn't thought of before. And you and I have been talking for quite some time. I'm going to be surprised if this is just a one-segment kind of discussion, just because.
Yeah.
Because of the implications there. I mean, it's all for naught if you don't handle every aspect of that, and your son gets too much money. Because we've talked before about if he gets too much money at the wrong time, then it could disqualify him from being able to live in certain places. He might be living in a place that's receiving a certain kind of aid, and he gets too much money, he has to leave, and that could be very disruptive to his lifestyle. And we don't want to do that. So we need to be thinking about the whole piece of it. So that brought up something I remembered from before. A lady asked a question, and hopefully I will ask it properly. It relates to she wanted to know that she was not interested, I don't know why, but she was not interested in any government benefits at all. She said, is there any way that parents can provide for their kids without relying in any capacity on any government benefits, that she wanted to make sure it was all self-funded? And I said, okay, I would ask the question, do you know anybody who's doing self-funding, and is there a reason why someone might want to shy away from government benefits? And that's sort of my promise I would ask you it.
Yes, we do have families that are trying to self-fund. One of the reasons why is because they've tried to use government benefits in the past. They have done very well financially during their life, and the headaches that they had with the government benefit system and the rules and regulations that they had to abide by and the hoops they had to jump through, for them wasn't worth it. So they wanted to figure out a way to private pay. What organizations will do that? How do they do it? And so we have worked with families in implementing that kind of a strategy too. Again, some of the same questions come into play that we have with families that want to do government benefits, and it comes back to our first conversation we had, Keith, about creating the story that you want for your child. What kind of life do you want for your child, your other children, and you going forward? And then figuring out what has to happen. And that's one question. Do we want to include government benefits or do we not? Because obviously that's going to have us either decide on a number of different avenues going forward, and taking one road versus taking another is that question. So we do have some families that decide, you know what, we want to see if we can plan for not using government benefits. And so that just takes us down a slightly different path.
But it helps. Parents are still asking the same questions. How do I take care of my child when I'm gone? So
that is the question. You're exactly right.
The question that we're all struggling with, and
Yeah.
I would think that the people who are looking to self-fund are going to be a very small percentage, because to have those kinds of funds to provide for you, your family, and for the future of your child with special needs and any of his medical and financial and communal needs he might have, it's going to be pretty substantial. So I would imagine that that segment of people who've got that kind of money around is going to be pretty small. For the majority of people, we're going to be needing to deal with and looking at the receiving government benefits and the things that it can do. And I think that there's going to be a whole wave of questions people are going to have about how to engage with the government, because the government is very burdensome. Oh my goodness, all the reporting and all the information, and they're always up in your stuff trying to ask questions and understand it, and I'm sure there's consultants out there who can help with it, but for most people, we're not going to have really a choice. We're going to say, okay, I've got to do the best I can. I've got to plan and utilize these tools and resources that are available for me and my family to make sure that my son or my daughter or my children are taken care of from now through their life.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know if that's exactly why she was asking, but I told her that I would ask the question of you, and I appreciate you doing that. As usual, Ryan, you did a great job. I appreciate all the information you have done. Any last things you'd like to share with us?
I just have to say, I appreciate that, and I thank you as always for your foresight in putting together this type of informational session for families. Certainly, you can find more information on your website. They can go to ours at aspecialneedsplan.com. I always welcome everybody to email us or call us, directly with your questions too. Our goal is to make sure families have the accurate information so that you can put together a plan that's appropriate, and then most importantly, act on it.
Right. Okay, Ryan. Well, we are set again for this coming Friday at 9:15, my time, 12:15 yours.
Perfect.
And we will talk about government benefits. So I appreciate that, Ryan, and we will see you on Friday.
You got it. Thanks, Keith.